Those who knew Bruce behind the scenes describe a man who was fiercely loyal, deeply protective of his loved ones, and always quick with a joke. He could command a room with silence or fill it with laughter. He was the type to prank his co-stars, then offer heartfelt advice when the cameras weren't rolling. His long-standing friendship with actors like John Travolta, Samuel L. Jackson, and Demi Moore reflected the kind of man he was, one who formed deep bonds and stood by them. And when he remarried in 2009 to Emma Hemming, a model and entrepreneur 23 years his junior, Bruce seemed more content than ever. Together they had 2 daughters, and Bruce often said that fatherhood later in life gave him a second chance at everything he thought he'd already experienced. But that's what makes this current tragedy even more gut-wrenching. Because Bruce wasn't just slowing down, he was thriving. He had found peace, stability, and purpose. He was enjoying family barbecues, doting on his daughters, planning new projects. And now all of that has been snatched away by an illness that doesn't care about legacies. Dementia doesn't discriminate between the ordinary and the extraordinary. It strips away identity piece by piece. It takes away the man, even as the body remains. And for Bruce, a man whose entire life was built on presence, timing, and voice, it's the cruelest fate imaginable. As his world shrinks, his family continues to expand their love. They've adjusted their lives completely to care for him. They limit visitors. They play old songs he loved. They show him photos of old film sets. Sometimes he responds. Other times he just stares into the distance. But they keep trying. Because Bruce gave the world everything. And now, those who love him most are giving it all back. While the world watches from a distance, heartbroken by Bruce Willis's fading light. The real weight of this tragedy is borne quietly behind closed doors, by the family who loves him more than any box office number or red carpet ever could. At the center of this emotional storm stands Emma Hemming Willis, his wife of over 16 years. Once a model and businesswoman known for her grace and elegance, Emma has now become Bruce's primary caregiver, his protector, and his daily lifeline. Caring for a loved one with frontotemporal dementia isn't just physically exhausting, it's emotionally devastating. The man she once shared laughter, parenting, and late-night conversations with is now often silent or confused. Some days are better than others, but as the disease progresses, those good days become fewer, and the moments of clarity become increasingly rare. In a tearful interview, Emma admitted, "It's hard knowing that he's here, but also slipping away." There's grief in the middle of life, and it never leaves. Their home life has completely transformed. Daily routines revolve around Bruce's care. Everything, from lighting to sound to visitors, must be carefully managed. He no longer attends public events. Crowds and noise agitate him. He often forgets what day it is. Sometimes he forgets who's in the room. But the family remains steadfast. Their mission is not to cure what can't be cured, but to preserve his dignity, surround him with familiarity, and love him through the fog of confusion. Emma has even taken to social media, not to ask for sympathy, but to raise awareness about FTD and the silent agony caregivers endure. "This is bigger than Bruce," she wrote. "It's about every family going through this invisible heartbreak." One of the most moving aspects of Bruce's story is how his blended family has come together. Demi Moore, Bruce's ex-wife and longtime friend, has become a rock of support, proving that love can evolve, endure, and still hold power even after divorce. Demi spends time with Bruce regularly and participates in major family milestones. This unity is rare in Hollywood, and it speaks volumes about the depth of respect and affection they all share. Their adult daughters, Rumor, Scout, and Tallulah, have been profoundly affected. Rumor, who just welcomed her first child, shared how heartbreaking it is that her father may never fully grasp that he's now a grandfather. "It's cruel," she said. "He would have been the most doting granddad." "I know it." The younger daughters, Mabel and Evelyn, are still in their formative years, watching their father change before their eyes, trying to understand why some days he's present, and others, a ghost. Emma tries to shelter them from the worst of it, but how do you protect a child from the slow disappearance of someone they adore? The Willis home has become a quiet battlefield, where love fights daily against loss. There are photos on the walls from Bruce's heyday, die-hard premieres, birthday parties, beach vacations. Emma plays his old music, hoping it triggers a smile or a flicker of recognition. And sometimes it does. Other times he just stares ahead, as if the man who once held the world's attention is now trapped somewhere unreachable. It's in these quiet, agonizing moments that the world's perception of Bruce Willis must shift. Yes, he was a movie star, a Hollywood legend, but now he is a husband, a father, a patient, and a man slowly vanishing, while those who love him hold on as tightly as they can. The media often glamorizes celebrity illness, but dementia isn't glamorous. It's ugly. It steals joy, twists memory, and leaves loved ones grasping for remnants of the person they once knew. For the Willis family, every day is a lesson in patience, resilience, and grief. They are mourning a man who is still alive, but they continue to share his journey, not for attention, but in hope. Hope that more people will understand this disease. Hope that others battling FTD will feel less alone. And hope that, even in silence, Bruce still feels the love that surrounds him. Because in the end, what defines Bruce Willis isn't just the movies or the fame. It's the strength he showed in life, and the strength his family now shows for him. As Bruce Willis continues his quiet battle with frontotemporal dementia, the question that lingers in the hearts of fans and family alike is simple. How do you say goodbye to someone who's still here? The answer, it seems, lies not in mourning what is being lost, but in fiercely remembering everything that was. Because Bruce Willis may no longer walk the red carpet or deliver iconic one-liners, but his legacy, both on-screen and off, is immortal. His name is etched into the golden history of Hollywood not just for the explosions, the heroics, or the box office records, but because of the man he was when the cameras stopped rolling. A man who laughed loudly, loved deeply, and lived with a kind of authenticity that made even his most outrageous characters feel real. Bruce never chased the spotlight. He commanded it. And now, in the shadows of illness, that light is being carried by those who knew him best. In living rooms and movie theaters around the world, his films continue to play. Die Hard is still a Christmas tradition. The Sixth Sense still stuns first-time viewers. Pulp Fiction still shocks, and Armageddon still brings tears. Bruce gave us moments. Moments that stitched themselves into our memories and helped define generations of moviegoers. And beyond the screen, his philanthropic work, his loyalty to friends, and his unwavering devotion to family told the story of a man far greater than the sum of his roles. Those closest to him say Bruce's greatest pride wasn't Hollywood, it was being a dad, a husband, a protector. That's the version of him his daughters will remember, long after the headlines fade. But even as the world honors his contributions, the reality is sobering. Frontotemporal dementia is relentless. There will be no comeback, no miracle recovery. The disease will continue to claim more of Bruce's speech, his motor skills, his ability to recognize even those he loves most. It is a future filled with uncertainty and heartbreak. Yet in the face of that, the Willis family is choosing grace. They're choosing to celebrate small victories. A smile, a laugh, a brief moment of clarity. They're choosing to honor him not with sorrow but with strength, because that's how Bruce lived. That's what he would want. The outpouring of love from fans has not gone unnoticed. Social media campaigns, tribute videos, fan art, and handwritten letters have flooded the family's inboxes. The hashtag #BruceStrong has become a global symbol of solidarity. Former co-stars, directors, and longtime friends have shared their memories and heartbreak. John Travolta called Bruce one of the most genuine souls I've ever known. Samuel L. Jackson said, "He gave everything to every role and every friendship." And Demi Moore, in a moment of raw honesty, wrote, "We spent years building a life. Now we're spending years letting go, but with love, letting go." That's the quiet pain woven into every breath of this journey. But Bruce's story doesn't end in silence. It ends in impact, in the millions of lives he touched, in the family who refuses to let him be defined by disease, in the laughter he gave us, the tears he drew from us, and the strength he still inspires in us. Illness may have dimmed the man, but it can't touch the legend. Bruce Willis will live forever in the frames of film, in the echoes of his gravelly voice, and in the hearts of those who grew up believing that if John McClane could survive Nakatomi Plaza, then maybe we could survive anything too. So tonight, if you find yourself scrolling through channels and The Fifth Element appears, or you hear the haunting whispers of, "I see dead people," or you stumble upon a clip of Bruce playing harmonica in some smoky bar, pause for a moment. Remember the man, the artist, the father, the husband, and know that while his words may fade, his legacy never will. Steven Seagal's journey to fame wasn't just improbable, it was almost mythical. Born in Lansing, Michigan in 1952, he was a quiet, lanky kid who didn't seem destined for superstardom. But what set Seagal apart early on was his intense devotion to martial arts. By his late teens, he had traveled to Japan, immersing himself in Aikido, mastering its graceful yet devastating techniques, and becoming the first foreigner to operate an Aikido dojo in the country. For nearly 15 years, Seagal lived as a mysterious outsider in a world of rigid discipline and respect, earning black belts and building a reputation as a man not to be underestimated. When he returned to the United States in the early 1980s, he brought with him not just his martial prowess, but a sense of mystique. Hollywood soon took notice. With the help of powerful connections, reportedly through talent agent Michael Ovitz, Seagal landed his first major role in Above the Law, 1988, a movie that catapulted him to stardom almost overnight. The public was captivated. Here was a new kind of action hero, calm, composed, lethal. Films like Hard to Kill, Marked for Death, and Out for Justice followed in rapid succession, each further cementing Seagal's image as the stoic avenger who could walk into a room of thugs and emerge without a scratch. At his peak, he was pulling in millions per film, starring alongside major names, and even hosting Saturday Night Live. But behind the camera, trouble was brewing. Colleagues began whispering about Seagal's attitude on set, claims of arrogance, difficult behavior, and a refusal to take direction. Rumors circulated about him exaggerating his martial arts accomplishments and even fabricating parts of his past. And while his films brought in revenue, critics were far less forgiving, often panning his acting range and dialogue delivery. By the mid-90s, the industry's patience began to wear thin. His big-budget features were underperforming, and allegations of misconduct started to emerge, some as serious as sexual harassment and intimidation, which painted a disturbing contrast to the honor-bound warriors he portrayed on screen. Instead of evolving with the times, Seagal seemed to double down on his persona, increasingly inserting himself as a producer or scriptwriter in his films, and pushing narratives where his characters were invincible, infallible, and oddly preachy. As roles dried up, he turned to direct-to-video projects, many of which were mocked for their low quality, and Seagal's obvious use of body doubles and overdubbing. His weight gain and slowed movement became punchlines in Hollywood, but the deeper tragedy was not in his changing appearance. It was in how utterly disconnected he had become from the world that once adored him. Directors stopped calling. Studios passed him over. Once hailed as the next big action star, Steven Seagal became a symbol of squandered potential and unfulfilled greatness. He had climbed the mountain of fame with astonishing speed, but now, in his 70s, he stood alone at the top, surrounded not by adulation, but by silence, scandal, and regret. As Steven Seagal's star faded from the marquee lights of Hollywood, something far darker began to take its place, a trail of allegations, lawsuits, and reputational collapse that would permanently exile him from the mainstream entertainment industry. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, what was once brushed off as eccentric or difficult behavior on set became impossible to ignore. Numerous actresses, assistants, and former collaborators began stepping forward with disturbing accusations. Some claimed Seagal had used his power to coerce, threaten, or harass women during auditions and on film sets, while Seagal repeatedly denied the claims, and some lawsuits were settled out of court. The growing number of stories painted a damning picture. Behind the calm, zen-like demeanor he presented in interviews and films was allegedly a man who abused his influence and power when the cameras weren't rolling. The industry began to distance itself. Casting directors stopped offering him roles. His name, once enough to greenlight a mid-budget action flick, became a liability. Even those who once defended him began to go silent. Major networks, production companies, and journalists refused to engage with Seagal, not just because of the allegations, but because of the toxic cloud that now hovered around him. At the same time, Seagal seemed to spiral into a self-imposed delusion of grandeur. He began to describe himself in interviews as a CIA operative, claiming mysterious past connections to government agencies and espionage operations, stories that were widely questioned and mocked. His obsession with authority led him to become a reserve deputy sheriff in Louisiana and Arizona, appearing in a short-lived reality TV show called Steven Seagal Lawman, which further blurred the line between fiction and reality. Critics accused the show of glorifying police brutality, and it was eventually canceled after legal troubles involving a raid gone wrong. Seagal's public image, already deeply fractured, now seemed irreparable. But instead of taking accountability or retreating into quiet reflection, Seagal turned eastward, literally. Embracing his lifelong admiration of Russian culture, martial arts, and leadership, Seagal developed close ties with the Russian government. In 2016, he was granted Russian citizenship by Vladimir Putin himself, a moment that drew fierce backlash in the United States. Many saw it not only as a symbolic departure from Hollywood, but a political one as well. Seagal embraced the role of cultural ambassador between the US and Russia, often speaking out against American foreign policy and praising Putin's leadership, a move that further alienated him from his homeland. What had once been a career built on silent strength and moral justice was now a maze of contradictions. A man who had portrayed American heroes on screen, now seen by many as a propaganda tool for a foreign power. The ultimate tragedy wasn't just in his fall from grace. It was in how far he seemed to drift from the man fans once believed he was. At 73, Seagal is no longer the Hollywood leading man or martial arts icon. He's a recluse in the international spotlight, exiled by the very system that once crowned him. And perhaps most haunting of all, he seems completely unaware or unwilling to accept just how profoundly his world has changed. Long before the scandals and the exile, Steven Seagal carefully crafted the image of a martial arts master, a stoic sensei, steeped in centuries-old traditions, a man who carried the discipline and humility of the East into the chaotic world of Western cinema. But over time, even that identity began to crack under scrutiny. While Seagal's early years in Japan were real, and his achievements in Aikido were indeed legitimate, martial arts experts began to question the myth he built around himself. Behind the curtain, stories from fellow martial artists painted a picture not of a humble master, but of a man obsessed with control and unwilling to engage in real combat outside of choreographed film scenes. Jean-Claude Van Damme reportedly challenged Seagal to a fight more than once during the 90s, at Sylvester Stallone's house no less, but Seagal allegedly backed down each time. Stuntmen who worked with him accused him of intentionally injuring them during rehearsals and filming, claiming Seagal took pride in inflicting real pain to assert dominance. Judo legend Gene LeBell famously choked Seagal out on a movie set after Seagal boasted that no one could ever do such a thing to him. According to some versions of the story, Seagal lost control of his bodily functions during the incident, though he has fiercely denied the account. Still, the damage to his image as an untouchable warrior was done. As more martial artists began sharing their behind-the-scenes experiences, the once mysterious Seagal began to look less like a master and more like a man hiding behind smoke and mirrors. His Aikido skills, while still impressive, didn't translate well into the gritty, mixed martial arts era ushered in by UFC and MMA, worlds where Seagal never stepped foot. Younger fans questioned his relevance, while older ones began to realize that perhaps the mystique had always been part of the act. Seagal didn't adapt, and he certainly didn't apologize. Instead, he continued to reinvent himself in increasingly surreal ways, claiming roles as an energy healer, a spiritual guru, even suggesting in some interviews that he had reached a level of enlightenment others could not understand. He spoke of dreams where he was told he had been a warrior in past lives, and at times referred to himself in the third person as though detached from his own legacy. His music career, which featured blues albums with titles like Songs from the Crystal Cave, was met with confusion and derision, especially when he tried to blend lyrics about peace and unity with his hyper-violent film persona. In truth, the tragedy lies not in a simple career decline, but in Seagal's growing detachment from reality. As he aged, the line between his movie roles and his personal identity seemed to dissolve. Instead of confronting his missteps, he created alternate versions of himself, versions that were always the hero, always the master, always the victim of betrayal. At 73, Steven Seagal seems trapped in a performance that no longer has an audience, clinging to an illusion that even his most loyal fans can no longer fully believe. And in that illusion,